Before we move to the round table later on, we have Professor Antony Mecherry, who is a Jesuit priest and professor of church history here at the Pontifical Oriental Institute. He received his PhD from the Gregorian in church history in 2016, and he belongs to the Jesuit province of Kerala in South India, which he was telling me just before, actually includes members of three Catholic churches, the Syro-Malabar Church, to which he belongs, the Latin Church, and the Syro-Malankara Catholic Church. His research focuses on the dialectical tension between faith and culture. He has worked in particular on the early modern Jesuit mission principle of accommodatio, and he has written two further monographs following on from his doctoral dissertation in 2016. His topic today is Catholics and Orthodox, the Indian experience. So let us welcome Professor Mecherry.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I was telling Professor Esa, she knows the ins and outs of this dialogue context, so she has already made the background. So I do not enter into the basic concepts of the Oriental Orthodox churches in connection with the Indian experience. In the morning we spoke about the experiential dialogue. That's very important to me, and also in the context of India, when the churches and the intra-church and inter-church complexities are widening, difficulties are widening. It's very we all longing for unity. So I speak about the current trends in Catholic Orthodox rapprochement, especially in the context of India. So we have already heard that 7 Oriental Orthodox churches are involved. And when we think of the Indian context, we speak about the Syrian Orthodox Church and its counterpart in India, Malankara Syrian Orthodox Church, known in India as the Jacobite Church. It is affiliated to the Antiochian Patriarch. And the Malankara Orthodox Syrian Church, that is independent Catholic. That's the two churches, unfortunately, in a very desperate situation of growing distance between themselves because of many other complex issues. And one is known as the Bava's party, the Patriarch's party, and the other one is Metran's party, Bishop's party, which does not accept the spiritual and the temporal authority of the Antiochian Patriarch. So this is a complex problem in India, and it has ultimately led to the court. So she has already mentioned the common declarations in the context of the Oriental Orthodox churches. We have already many declarations, doctrinal declarations are already signed, and the most influential declaration among all these declarations, as even the Joint Ecumenical Commission admits and praises, the declaration between the Syrian Patriarch Mar Ignatius Saka, first of Ivors of Antioch 1984, and the Catholic Church, Pope John Paul II. Why it is important? Because after that 1984 declaration in India, there was a recognition at the concrete level of the identity in faith. Identity, I think it's a crucial terminology. Even in the documents of the Joint Ecumenical Commission, the Dialogue Commission, identity, observation of the identity in faith moves hand in hand with the current pastoral realities of India. We cannot neglect the pastoral realities of India that necessitates collaboration, especially in a fast-paced world. No church, also in my opinion, can respond effectively to the signs of the time, turning a deaf ear to the realities of the actual world in which she exists. In 1990, after this declaration, doctrinal agreement between Pope John Paul II and the Catholicos Mar Basilius Marthoma Matthews of the Independent Church of India, Orthodox Church of India, and that was a fruit of this 1984 agreement with the Syrian Patriarch. Again in 1994, Catholic Church and the Malankara Jacobite Church of India signed an agreement about inter-church marriages. All the documents are available online, and again a pastoral guideline specifically how to deal with this situation in the context of India, because all these churches, they are following the same rite, they are following the same tradition, and the unique ecumenical climate of India, all these churches now divided in 7 groups, we all share the same history until the end of the 17th century. That we will speak immediately about it. Although the possibility of signing a similar agreement on inter-church marriages with the independent church, Orthodox Church of India, officially Malankara Orthodox Syrian Church, has been already studied under the guidance of the Dialogue Commission, it has not yet been realized because of various political reasons. Also, I mentioned earlier, it's a very serious situation at the moment in India. 2010, although the stalemate continues even now on the question of inter-church marriages between these churches, 2 Orthodox churches of India, the Malankara Orthodox Syrian Church, that means the independent church, has an agreement with the Catholic Church on sharing in the sacrament of anointing of the sick in the special circumstances when the respective priest of the same rite is not available. Some other important pastoral agreements are underway, and some are already adopted in these 2 churches in the fields of sharing sacred places and cemeteries and collaborating with the theological institutions. For example, the Jacobite students attend the theological and philosophical faculty of the Catholic Church, Syro-Malabar Church, mainly the Vadavathur Kottayam Seminary. So that is pastorally already implemented, and also trying a common reading of the history of the church in India is a very delicate point. Common reading of the history of the church. Yesterday also we speak about the common understanding, common reading of the history of the church. That also belongs to the other churches, other contexts also. I would say that this institute, Pontifical Oriental Institute, promotes and contributes to the common reading of history of these churches from an academic and ecumenical point of view. Evaluating the pastoral agreements mentioned above, the concerned Joint International Commission for Theological Dialogue upholds again the 1984 declaration as a role model in the context of the Oriental Orthodox churches that could be duly considered by the respective heads of the other 5 churches in the family of the Oriental Orthodox Communion in their ecumenical rapprochements. What is the unique ecumenical climate of India? We cannot replant another contextual reality in India because these Christians, traditionally known as Malankara Marthoma Nasranigal. Nasrani is a terminology I know in the Eastern European context. It may sound a little bit derogative, but that is not the etymological understanding here. It means only Christians. Malankara refers to the spatial implication of this church, southwest of India, Malankara. Original name of this community before the split in the 17th century. Marthoma implies the apostolic origin of these churches. Nasranical implies Christians. So what I said, nothing to do with the Proto-Slavic etymology, or might have some influences from the Arabic usage of the terminology in Quran and Hadith, Nasrani. So they were using this terminology for Christian. In India, this term honorably adopted by the Thomas Christians in Malabar to define their religious identity that is known in the local language Malayalam, Marthoma Margam. That is exact translation. Margam comes from the Pali language, the Buddhist context, earlier centuries, then adopted in the Sanskrit language, then in Malayalam. Margam, that means only the way shown by Saint Thomas the Apostle. So this is the identity of all these churches, which was lamentably and strategically misrepresented during the Latin mission, and they translated wrongly without understanding the terminology Margam, way they translated it into law of Thomas. That is creating trouble even today. and that created trouble in the past. It has nothing to do with the law. It has something to do with, mostly to do with the way of Thomas, that the disciple Thomas presented the Christian faith in India, and they believed it from the very early centuries. Mar Thoma Margam, the way of Saint Thomas. So these Christians in India, until it was unheard in India about the Great Schism of 1054. The birth of Orthodox churches in India in 17th century, we need to understand the division, we need an ecumenical understanding. Primary reason behind the schism. If we borrow the words of Pope Leo XIII from Orientalium Dignitas of 1894, the division was contributed also by, I quote Latin, incommodi imprudenter obrebat ab occidentalibus evangelii administris. Freely translate, my translation, disaster or damage unwisely brought in by the Western servants of the gospel. The 1894 document of Leo XIII was a warning not to repeat the similar mistakes in the future. However, the question of division in India then, in the 17th century, was not related to Eastern rites. Popular narratives, there will be confusion when I say that. I explain. But it was related to a pastoral, cultural, and administrative nature. A question of pastoral, administrative, and cultural nature. In the public oath, which is available in many of the archives in Rome, the public oath of this division of the separated brethren, there were six resolutions by the separated brethren. There was no bull of excommunication. There was no expression of doctrinal dissent. There was no mention of rite or liturgy. There was no mention of distance from Rome or the Catholic Church. What was there? The 6 resolutions of the 1663 were centered around 2 points. First, a call for reinstating the autonomy of the Malankara Marthoma Nasranical in the hands of the local archdeacon. Because local archdeacon has a special tradition in the Indian context. Because the church was traditionally governed by the East Syrian prelates, but the church had enjoyed an autonomy for many centuries. So, implicit desire for prelates of one's own right. Second point, a common pledge, open oath, not to welcome anymore in their church, specifically the missionaries from the polis. Means the Jesuits were known in India are the polis fathers, because they had a college known as polis, St. Paul College. So these were the 2 oaths. The rest of the resolutions were centered around these 2 resolutions. Context of 1652, what happened to trigger this reaction after half a century after the Synod of Deamber? The Synod of Deamber, most of you know. After half a century, why triggered this division? Arrival in India of a Syrian prelate, convert to Catholicism. Antiochian connections hierarchically started later in 1655. Then Jesuit Archbishop Francisco Garcia, he didn't allow the Christians to meet this bishop, to check his credentials. By 1770, after the oath, the church was separated. At the end of the 18th century, there was internal split in the Orthodox brethren because of the influence of the Syrian Patriarch. And 1772, there was another church among the separated group, Malabar Independent Syrian Church. Another interesting point, Antiochian faith, anaphoras of St. James, the West Syrian script, Serto script, they became normative only during 1836 to 57. During this period, all these things were introduced into the church by the Syrian prelates. Only in 1876, Orthodox faith, canons, and the laws, including the 3 synods, you know that the Oriental Orthodox Church, they do not accept they accept only 3 synods. So the faith of the 3 councils And the authority of the Syrian patriarch became normative for the separated brethren. That means both the spiritual and the temporal authority of the Syrian patriarch and the faith and the canons and the three councils became normative in these separated brethren. Stumbling blocks. I do not explain all these complex situations. What are the stumbling blocks today for this experiential dialogue? As a person coming from the land, in addition to our attempt to find identities of faith, we may need a different approach to address the questions in India. And we all agree that we are all going through a fast-paced cultural changes. We cannot turn our deaf ear or eye to these realities of fast-paced changes also are happening in India. The political strategies of a nationalist government, under which leave 2.2% of the Christians under different denominations, the related persecution of the minorities, and the anti-conversion bills. Already they have introduced in 5 states of India. Anti-conversion bills, very serious. Intra-church conflicts and the related legal stalemates affect the ecumenical rapprochements. First, very serious, the latest Supreme Court verdict. Because of the intra-church problem among these 2 Orthodox churches in India, Supreme Court has made a very strong verdict. I read from the verdict of 2017. The authority of the Syrian Patriarch in India has come to a point of no return. That means the Syrian Patriarch of Antioch has no authority, whether it is spiritual, whether it is temporal, he doesn't have. That means, implication, the Jacobite church doesn't have a jurisdictional personality in India. The church in India, which is affiliated to the Syrian Patriarch, doesn't have a jurisdictional personality. So juridically, it doesn't exist. But we all know that as a fact, the Jacobite church exists in India. The conflict between law and fact. Court has made its final verdict. Syro-Malabar Catholics, we know, and it is now known to everywhere, conflicts related to a rubric in the celebration of the Eucharist, still to be resolved, certain issues. Conflict between the Syrian Patriarch and the hierarchy of the Southeast. Southeast means an endogamous community in the Orthodox Church. Jacobite Church, they have also a community, endogamous community. They are known as Southeast culturally and historically. And the Syrian Patriarch has recently demoted the metropolitan title of one of their bishops of the Jacobite Church in India. Again, problem. Inter-church issues. The Jacobite Church's court appeal. The Jacobite Church in India made an appeal to the court, Supreme Court, to respect the majority of their members in some parishes, just to hold on their parishes, because they have already more than 200 parishes. They have already lost 52 churches to the Orthodox group of India, but the court has rejected their petition. That means the final verdict of this appeal also, according to that appeal verdict, the Jacobite Church cannot hold, even though they are majority in some churches, they cannot hold on the authority on those churches. They have already lost 52 churches until today. So implicit conflicts of word war, as Father Paruja was mentioning yesterday, about the terminology of Catholicos. Historically, it lasted a long time, and when the Syro-Malankara Church from the Independent Orthodox Church of India wanted to join the Catholic Church, one of the conditions made by the Catholic authority here in Rome was do not hold on to the title of Catholicos. So it was a title also during the East Syrian context. It was during the missionary time, it was a very difficult terminology for the Latin missionaries because it means universal pastor, Catholicos. But at this moment in India, both the Orthodox churches and the head of the Syro-Malankara Catholic Church, they have the title Catholicos. So we have 3 Catholicos sitting on the throne of St. Thomas according to the tradition. So the conflict leads to the new sacramental. How many minutes? 5 minutes. Okay. The conflicts leads to new sacramental issues. That's very serious. New sacramental issues and constellations of churches. For example, the Jacobite Church in India does not accept, after this conflict, since 2020, the holy oil of the Indian Orthodox Church. I don't explain the sacramental implications because it becomes the confirmation, they have to redo the confirmation, etc. So they don't accept the sister churches between the Orthodox churches. They do not accept the holy oil. Just to another aspect of this distance, new constellations of these churches. The Jacobite churches move closer to the Marthoma Church, distancing from the Malankara Orthodox Syrian Church, and they are now more closer to the pro-Anglican division of this St. Thomas Christian community known as the Marthoma Church. During the Anglican mission, there was another division at the end of the 19th century. And Indian Orthodox Church, at the same time, the Independent Church of India, moves closer to the Moscow Patriarchate. And they have agreements between them about the sharing of sacred places in India. For example, when last month in September, when the head of the Indian Orthodox Church visited Rome, he had paid a visit to Pope Francis and also the Moscow Patriarchate. So the response to the problem, I finish, the response to the problem on the part of the other Catholic churches. What did the Syro-Malabar Catholics say? After the Synodal News 2020, I quote the Synodal News of the Syro-Malabar Catholic Church about this problem. The Supreme Court has made its verdict, but the interested parties have the freedom to make proper compromises for the good and peace of the society. My personal comment, true. Compromises out of legal matrix and intricacies have an ecumenical, pastoral, and witnessing role when we think about the experiential and synodal dialogue. Response of the Syro-Malankara Catholic Church about this big problem. They expressed their readiness to share their sacred places for the Jacobite Church for the celebration of the Eucharist. Okay, problem remains. Conclusion. I end with one maybe. All these churches in India are in need of finding a common ground of understanding in the face of existential problems. All these churches in India may be applicable to other churches, are in need of a common reading of history, first respecting at the same time the narrative differences, perspectives in non-essential matters. Unity in diversity is integral to the Indian reality and experience. We have 30 states with complete diversity of experiences, and we have to change when we cross the border of a state. All these churches are in need of a common response to the causes that affect them all, whether those causes are related to social justice, to the politics of othering, exclusion. We discussed yesterday the politics of exclusion. Professor Butcher, I think he was speaking about, and to the causes of human dignity, in order that we may not perish together. Thank you so much. I may have taken maybe 1 more minute extra.
Thank you very much. I think once again we have time just for a quick question before we close. Dear Father Edward, yes.
In gratitude to what you said, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed what you said, and I like the fact that you seem more to talk than to read. I am a Nasrani. We Maltese call ourselves the Christians of St. Paul in Sara, according to the Arabic language. You know, that's the word used by Tertullus, the lawyer who accuses Paul and says, this man belongs to the faction of the Nasrani. And it's supposed to be, I think that's Acts 24:1, or at any rate, somewhere there. and it's supposed to be older than Masihi, as in Arabic now, Christian, anoint. Mesah is the word, the Arab word we use too. Masahin are the Christians. And that's supposed to come, although it's earlier in the Acts, it's supposed to be later, actually, as a word. Thank you so much.
One response to his comment. I too completely agree with Father Faruja. I too believe in the Syriac background that was existing pre-Islam time, pre-Arabic time, when it was used, the title Nasrani. I think it is coming from that pre-existing terminology. I completely agree with you.
It comes from Nazarene.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. It is very known also in all the sources. That's in Syriac sources. Yeah.
Once again, let us thank both of our speakers this afternoon. Now, we have a rather delayed coffee break, and then we will convene. Taras, what would you like us to do in terms of the round table?
We'll gather here. Some of people will be at the tribune, and we will share some questions, some common questions, and everyone will have the chance to express themselves.
And it's 4:10 now. Should we do that at 4:30? Okay. So we reconvene at 4:30. Thank you.